and it's going to start back up again.
That's absolutely right. And I mean, the implication of this al-Maliki campaign to repress the Sunni neighborhood armed groups is clearly that he is prepared to have a number of those people go back underground, and that then he can go after them, and he feels confident, and I think rightly so, as I've been saying, and I think you'll recall over the months since the middle of last year, that al-Maliki believes that within the Baghdad area particularly, he has sufficient power in terms of military and police power to really go after the Sunnis. Of course, the Shia essentially beat the pants off the al-Qaeda and other Sunni groups in Baghdad in 2006, and that was a major turning point in the political dynamics within Iraq. And I think that accounts from the Iraqi side. That accounts for the fact that he feels that he can proceed with this and take the risk that he's going to drive a large proportion of these Sunni ex-insurgents back into the insurgency.
So the coming battle is not, the kind of thing where the Sunnis are going to anytime soon make an attempt to reoccupy Baghdad, their former city that they've been almost completely kicked out of. It's basically going to be a contest to see whether Maliki can extend his control over the land that's now basically patrolled by these CLC types.
That's right. I mean, he's going to make a move, I think, aimed at further consolidating Shia control over the remaining Sunni majority neighborhoods. Of course, that's shrunk enormously from what it was in 2005, early 2006, to a very relatively small part of Baghdad now, a very small part of Baghdad. And of course, the Sunni insurgents will still be active in Baghdad underground. They will not presumably move out completely, but I think more and more they will have to shift some of their operations out of Baghdad, and perhaps Diyala province will be an area where they will be more active relative to Baghdad, for example.
Well, what this means is that we have to stay forever in order to prevent there from being further violence.
Well, I have to tell you the truth. I mean, I really thought hard about whether there was any reason to suggest in my piece that the U.S. military command was not that unhappy to see this development, because it would, in fact, give them, of course, yet further argument as to why the United States must continue to maintain high troop levels in Iraq and do whatever's necessary to try to avoid having to pull them out even after 2011. I did not say that, and I simply honestly don't know. I mean, there's no hard evidence that is the case. It would be simply a supposition on my part, but one does inevitably entertain that suspicion that might have been a thought in the minds of Odierno and his staff.
Well, there was something in the New York Times, I think, today that said, the threat of violence with these Sunni militias
right. I mean,
as America withdraws puts our plan into jeopardy.
Yeah, they're taking advantage of this. And, I mean, the article was really about the much broader array of situations where there's evidence of increased Sunni as well as, particularly Sunni al-Qaeda and non-al-Qaeda activities in Baghdad and elsewhere. And I suppose that may be true. I mean, I have no information to contradict that. But there's no question that the command is putting out that line, is interested in creating that impression, because it does support the policy line that they've made it very clear they want to see carried out over the next 3 years, which is to maintain as high a level of U.S. combat troops in Iraq as they can bring about.
Right. That way they can cross the line in the so-called law, the Status of Forces Agreement, and stay longer.
And I have no doubt that these military, officers, high-level military officers in Iraq, have not given up by any means the idea that they may be able to bring this off. For one thing, tonight I heard David Kilcullen, the Australian advisor to Petraeus in Iraq, who's just published a new book, The Accidental Guerrilla, speak at this centrist, center-right, I think is perhaps more accurate, think tank, the Center for New American Security. And he's a very provocative guy. He's a very smart guy and very irreverent, and he often says things that are at odds with the current line. But one of the things he said tonight, which was quite interesting, is that the factors, political, social, military factors that support the prospect of a coup or the possibility of a coup are extremely favorable. They are very well aligned in Iraq today.
A coup in favor of who?
For a military coup against the present Iraqi government.
Well, in favor of any political faction, did he say,
well,
or just
no,
Iraq's army itself?
It would be the army itself, yeah.
Uh-huh.
And so, I mean, this is something that Ken Pollack of the Brookings Institution, who is still one of the strongest enthusiasts of the U.S. military presence in Iraq, very much aligned with the U.S. military brass in the command in Baghdad, brought back with him last fall from his trip. Actually, it was late fall, early winter, when he came back from one of those trips sponsored by the U.S. command in Iraq, and was talking about the possibility of a coup d'etat. And of course, he was saying that this would not be favorable, not because it couldn't succeed, but because it would be seen as a sectarian move and would create its own set of problems. Just recalling, of course, Vietnam, 1963.
Yeah, Nouri al-Diem.
Yeah.
But so does this imply then that the Iraqi army is basically the Badr Corps, and that it would be a Supreme Council coup against the Dawa Party? Or
I don't think they're suggesting...
What's so sectarian about it if it's the army that does it?
No, they're not suggesting that at all. I think that remark by Ken Pollack was not clear as to what he meant by that it would be perceived as sectarian.
Yeah, it's not like he's saying the Baathists are going to take... It's not like he's saying the Baathists are going to take back over.
He's not saying Baathists, but certainly a possibility is that some of the military units that are closest to the United States would try to seize power. I mean, and those would be obviously those units that are, farthest from being the Badr Corps, and more Sunni or Sunni Shia mixed, but definitely, the units that have cooperated very closely with the U.S. military in the past to carry out some of the operations that the al-Maliki government did not approve of, particularly in Baghdad.
Well, it's just like Ryan Crocker said, this war is much closer to its beginning than its end. And, it's funny, George Bush would always put us off by 6 months. Just give us 6 more months. We're going to figure this out. It's going to be great. Just give us 6 more months. Obama successfully bought 3 years. Yep, we're going to get out, I promise, in 3 years. And so now he's got, 3 years of not getting us out to get away with before it, becomes a problem. By then, everyone will have forgotten that he ever said so.
Well, I don't know if they'll forget. I certainly hope they won't forget. But certainly what we can predict is that the situation will go through more major changes over the next 3 years. And what those changes will be, very, very hard to predict. I mean, I was just thinking today that if one does a kind of structural timeline of the Iraq conflict since the United States invasion, you see that every single year has major shifts, major structural changes in the nature of the conflict, new actors, new alignments, new strategies being adopted by major players, and you have to assume that trend, that pattern is going to continue.
Yeah, along with the occupation, they will continue to fail upwards, like all bureaucrats.
That's a very good way to put it. Yes, they will continue to fail, and they will continue to be rewarded, presumably, for their failures.
Absolutely. All right. Well, same story, different day. Thanks very much for your time. Really appreciate it, Gareth.
Pleasure as always, Scott. Thanks.
All right, everybody. That's Dr. Gareth Porter from Interpress Service. You can find all he writes at original.antiwar.com/Porter.